The little thing that says, there we go. Okay, it looks like we're live. We've got showing people signing up.
I think there's a slight delay.
Okay. All right, I'll just start talking then. Okay, so welcome to this webinar, and today we're going to be looking at the Local Government Association e-learning module, Making an Impact with Data. So made in association with the Open Data Institute, which is where I am today, with Emily. So hello, Emily.
Hi.
My name's Lucy Knight. If you don't already know me, I work for Devon County Council. I'm a project manager, policy, strategy and data person. I'm also an ODI trainer, and I run help to run the ODI Devon node, which is a node of the Open Data Institute, so that's me. On the introductions, can everybody see and hear us before we really get rolling? Could you stick a comment on YouTube and just say, hello, yes, we can hear you, we can see you. We've had some technical problems last time, so I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds just to see.
There is a slight delay.
There is a slight delay, but someone's saying, Alex is saying hello. Hello, Alex. So that's one.
I think we should just get started.
Should we just get going? Okay, I'm being told to just move it along, so I'm just going to do that. Jesus. Right, so the structure of this is, in a minute I'm going to screen share. I'm going to take a look at the e-learning module. We'll spend about 20 minutes just going through that and talking about the issues around that, and then another 40 minutes of questions and discussion. So if you want to ask a question at any time, stick it in the chat window beside YouTube, or if you have Knowledge Hub open, you can stick a comment in there. Emily's going to be monitoring that as well. Or if you have trouble with either of those methods, you can email. And all right, so from my view, this looks backwards. Hopefully this is forwards for you guys. You can email training@theodi.org, and Emily's also monitoring that, and she'll let me know if there are any questions. Ask a question anytime you want to, or comment, chip in with your experience. That's all really, really helpful, and we can talk about whatever comes up, as long as it's obviously about open data, because that's what this is all about. So let us know what you'd like to talk about, or any questions that you'd like to ask. And also, the Local Government Association would very much like your feedback on this. So if you have any thoughts on how this went, what was included, what was missed, let them know. transparency@local.gov.uk, which is also up there and hopefully forwards for you, because it still looks backwards to me. And right, that's all the intro bit. Any questions before we get started? I know we already had one that came in. We can say it's all good, everyone can hear. Fantastic. Right, so the question that has already come in was about data sharing. So I'm going to work my way down to that bit of the module, and then we'll talk about that, if that is okay. Now, Emily, help me out. Where's the button for screen sharing? There we go.
And it goes weird, remember?
And then it goes really, really, really weird from our point of view. Right, so we're now, and hopefully you guys will catch up in a minute, looking at the e-learning module, making an impact with data. So what you get with each of these e-learning modules is a little intro. This is what this is all about. And then in this case, it's talking about the benefits of doing open data, how to get the maximum impact, and some case studies. So councils would have already done some really, really good work with open data. In plain English, that's why you should do it, how to do it really well, and how other people are doing it really well. So the headings that we've got here, the benefits are, so we've got transparency and accountability. Now, transparency for me is a no-brainer. You just should. You should be open, you should be helpful, you should be clear. We are paid to do what we do. Hopefully some information falls out of how we do our jobs. And if it's appropriate and legal to share, then we really just should. We should be open about how we get things done and how we make decisions. So that for me is like puppies and sunshine. It's just, you should just do that. Make your data useful. And then underneath, we've got improving services. And again, for me, this is about making data useful. It means we get more from it too. And that can be from our existing data that we're just collecting, and it's just the exhaust data from the services that we deliver. Or if we're collecting new data because we have some need, we have some problem to solve, and we begin to collect something different. In terms of open data, what we've found a great deal in the past is that if you're looking at your data with a view to making it open, it forces you to look at the quality. in the completeness and the accuracy of that data. It forces you to think of it in terms of how do I make this usable for somebody else. And once you begin to do that, you will find that obviously you yourself are going to benefit, your colleagues are going to benefit, your partners are going to benefit, because any data that you're working with, you will begin to think of it in terms of how can I make this even more useful. So cleaned up, structured, standard formats and schemas whenever you can find them, machine readable, linked if you can do that, if you can have it so that it's looking up other data sets, relevant data sets. This is all good. There's no way this can be seen as a bad thing. There's a resource implication in doing that tidying up, obviously, but I mean, everybody wins. So that's for the existing data. For the new data, if we get the chance to collect some new data, if we have something that we can do with sensors, as some councils are doing, or using other people's open data and mashing it up with ours, we can start to see new areas of focus, of priority. We can start to work out how we can do things even better, how we can change some assumptions or prove some of our assumptions. And it just becomes an exercise in what else could we think about that we might need to know, and how might we get that data together, which has got to lead to improvements in the way that we actually deliver our services. Now, third on the list is about efficiency, which is a word I'm sure we're all keen to hear more about because we haven't heard enough about that. That was sarcasm, by the way. Using and sharing data, is the note that I've got here on my post-it, to show where we can focus resources, which is a string of buzzwords all put together, but there is something about the amount of time we spend redoing work with data, but cleaning it up again, sorting it in a different order, adding another category because what we were given didn't have what we needed, linking it up, doing a postcode lookup so we know what ward something's happening in. That sort of work is repeated in odd corners and pockets of every council up and down the land, and it needn't be. It just needn't be. If you had good data that everybody could access, or everybody within your organisation, or it's shared and it's open, again, where appropriate, and anyone can look at it, it saves so much time. So if nothing else, if you've got a team of analysts, if you've got 2 analysts in your council, if you've got 10, if you've got 50, if you've got 100 people doing that different job, that same job, and they each have to spend probably half of their week tidying up the data that they've been given, that is a massive waste of time and money. And it's not a good use of their skills. They could be doing so much more with what they're given if they had the chance to do more work and sort of investigating problems, or just tidying up what they've got and presenting it in a different way. So efficiency is definitely a thing. And I'm not talking about the dreaded back office savings, I'm just talking about giving people room to do more and better work because they don't have to do that over and over again, manual processing. The final category we got down here is empowering citizens, which I always talk about under the heading of community. So what we've got here is about enabling citizens to hold governments to account. And yes, that's a thing. It's definitely a thing. They can check our sums. They can make sure we're not spending on things we shouldn't spend on. But it's also an opportunity, if you're publishing good quality open data, it's an opportunity for people to look at the situation, the way services are delivered, how we assess needs, and to plan and to prioritise what they're going to do. Because never forget, we don't have all the good ideas. We can't possibly know what it is that other people might do with that data, or how they might work to improve things in their community, given the right information. So there's definitely a benefit to opening it up and saying, we think you guys can probably use this to do something in a different way to us, and that's actually a good thing. And so here is the information that you need, and see what you can do with that. Allow community groups and individuals to take a look at what we look at and make up their mind about what might be the best course of action for them to take. But again, community groups, charities, community interest companies and so on, they have their own resource issues. Good data will help them to focus and to prioritise and to bid for specific pots of money for specific outcomes. So it's definitely a good thing to do. So do we have questions there, Emily?
Not yet, so feel free to post your questions in the live chat, or again at the email address training@theodi.org, or via the K-Hub thread. Before we move on though, and to give people a chance to add some questions, could you run us through any of the case studies and examples?
It can, yeah. It means scrolling down a bit to the bottom here.
Oh, I meant the ones in these.
Oh, okay.
Or examples of.
Examples of. Okay, so examples of. Let me see. Yeah, this, there are case studies at the bottom. So we've got London Borough of Redbridge has developed an online tool to engage residents in. Okay, should we open that up in a new tab? Let's have a little look at that. So here we go. This is London Borough of Redbridge. Have your say on how we should save 7 million this year. Now, that's a lot of money, but council budgets in the region of something 100 million per year, which again sounds like a huge amount of money, but the vast majority of that budget usually goes on social care, adults and children's social care, which is an expensive thing to deliver and obviously has to be done. So it looks like, okay, I can't click any of these things. There we go, click the start button. If anyone from Redbridge is watching, I have to say there's far too many clicks for my liking, but never mind. So here we go. So you can slide and say, right, if we add something to the children's services and education budget, okay, we've got a deficit there, and we are going to have to increase council tax by 17%. I can't see that being popular. So this is a nice little tool. You say, right, well, you know, okay, let's cut the budget on environment and waste. Actually didn't help all that much. Surprisingly, community safety is still not doing much. So no matter what you do, if you want to increase the budget somewhere, obviously, somewhere else is going to have to pay for that. And it's a difficult thing to do. And I have to say, I have never envied the team, the job that the finance teams have to do in making sure that everything balances. It is a hard thing to do because, let's face it, none of the services that we deliver really can be considered to be non-essential. No matter what we do, there's going to be an impact on somebody somewhere. So that's a good one, because I assume that is feeding in from sort of budget spreadsheet somewhere, and obviously the calculations for potential council tax increase and so on and so forth. So that's nice. It's updated 2012, so it'd be nice to see what the current one is. Let's have a look and see what the examples are under improving efficiency. Yes, Troubled Families Programme is a good example. This is obviously not open data because this is people's very sensitive, very personal information, but efficient data sharing between teams, between organisations in a partnership is going to help identify those families whose lives are being touched by multiple services, sometimes even on the same day, and to say, right, what is the combination of circumstances that is leading to these people needing a lot of help or a lot of support or a lot of interventions, and can we be talking better with the other services that are supplying those interventions or supplying that help so that we can do a better job of supporting this particular family. Excuse me. So that's, it's very, very expensive. I forget the exact numbers, but it's very, very expensive to hold somebody in custody for the night. It's very, very expensive to send out an emergency team to look after a child who's in danger. It's very, very expensive to do all these things. And whilst those things need to be done to keep people safe, it would be good if we were better at keeping an eye on helping people before they got to the point of needing all of that, and making sure we had a coordinated response and a whole family view of what was going on, so that we could be on the lookout for opportunities to help and support earlier on, prevent these problems arising. I think down in the text here, interventions being calculated to save over £7,000 per family in the demand for reactive services. So there you go. I forget the number of actual families in the Devon Troubled Families Programme, but it's something, it's a couple of hundred. So that is certainly going to add up. Let's have a look at examples under improving services. Okay, Milton Keynes, I like this one. I got told off in the last webinar for getting too nerdy over the tech, but parking sensors. If you have a better view of what's going on, like real time or as near to real time as you can get it, say every half an hour, then you can direct resources. So if people need to know where to park and they can't find that information, they're driving round and round and round, then the city is getting snarled up and people aren't getting to the shops to spend their money, or they're not getting to work, or they're not getting to school, or they're not getting to wherever it is they need to be. So keeping an eye on parking in a busy city is definitely a useful thing to do. And that information, if you gather that and you store that, can be used to do other things as well. Imagine if that data is shared, anonymized and shared, we can look at the patterns. Market traders could work out what's the best day to put the stall up. This is day everyone's coming in and they're parking here near here, so actually I'm going to get a license for that particular market street or arcade. It's that sort of information that helps more than just the council. Greater Manchester Public Service Reform Planning. Oh, it's a PDF. Well, okay. Using data to model the impact of changes to services. So this, I'm going to talk a bit more about this in a minute when we work our way down to the next bit, the impacts. But the idea that we could start to get a little smarter with our data and actually do some modelling and some forecasting with it, I think is a really fascinating one. I'll move on to that, I think, in a minute. I'm just going to check in. Do we have any questions yet? Any emails? Not yet. Okay. Right then. So moving on down to the next section was maximising impact. I have personally mixed feelings about the whole maximising and measuring impact, because for me, transparency and just being open about what it is that we're doing and sharing that data should just be a thing that we do. But that's maybe, it's just my view. It's not the official view. But we should and we do see an impact if we do better with our data. Top heading here is creating a data culture, and there's another possibly slightly overused phrase. It's right up there with putting data at the heart of everything. I don't even know what that means. But there's a good explanation here about what a data culture would look like. So consider it every decision-making point, every change in strategy, etc., etc. For me, a data culture is what you get when data is valued as an asset. It's trusted, it's consulted, it's continuously improved, and it's maintained, and crucially it's consumed. It doesn't just sit somewhere so that we can say, oh yes, we've got 5,000 data sets. It's drawn into decision making, it's drawn into modeling, it's drawn into monitoring, and people use it, and in using it more they improve it more and they trust it more, and it becomes a virtuous circle of consistent improvement in the way that we collect, maintain and use our data. But that has to be not driven from the very top, it has to exist everywhere. I think that is another thing that is a sort of an upward spiral of reinforcement, that if analysts are given space and time to improve the data and do more with it and communicate it more and present it in ways that answer the right questions, that managers and sort of working your way up the hierarchy, directors and councillors and so on and so forth, as you go up, will begin then to trust that the data exists and it's good data, and will ask more questions. They will ask more searching questions, and that will filter back down. Well, we need to provide this now, so we need to improve this data even more, or we need to present it in a different way, and that filters back up. So it's everybody is a part of that system. It's reinforcing the belief that data is important and it's something we can rely on, and it will help us to do what we need to do. I don't think it will work if it's just the chief executive saying, we jolly well are a data-driven organisation, because that's just words. It's good to get that support from the top level, but there needs to be a commitment to actually using that data, to asking questions of the data, and showing some faith in the people who are supplying that data that can be done, and supporting those people with the resource that they need to take a step back from the manual processing, improve the data and do things differently, do things better. So next on the list, problem-based data use. And this is probably one of my favourite things that I do in my typical working week. So looking at, we have this particular issue facing us. What do we know about what's going on there? What data would help us to solve that? Do we need to collect something differently? Do we need to ask somebody else if they have some information? How can we sort of put together that information in a way that tells us what's going on? And an example we've got right now at Devon County Council is that we've been doing some systems thinking. So looking at each thing that we do as a purposeful system rather than as a service, silo-based, sort of strictly delineated, we do this and nothing else. But rather, what is the purpose of this thing that we are putting people through? And if we get that right, what does that look like? And if we can work out what that looks like, then what actual data might we collect around that to make sure that we are doing that correctly, doing that enough, and monitoring that. And that's proving to be, it's not impossible to work out, but it's a much harder question than you think, because the way that we traditionally worked is, well, we deliver an education service, therefore we know people are getting educated if this many people sit exams and get this many results. And that's okay as a proxy, but it's not the whole story. How many children didn't get the GCSE options that they wanted because the school just couldn't timetable it? How many children have been excluded and have had to then go on to a unit when alternative arrangements could have been made? How many children have stepped out of school because they were being bullied and then had to go back because no alternative place could be found? These are things that don't necessarily always look into from the point of view of the individual going through the service. So for me, this is a really, really interesting piece of work, looking at, are we just managing what we measure, so we only measure what we can manage? And can we do that differently? And then next section, engaging with the community. And again, it's a lovely phrase and I hear it a lot. And sometimes it makes me roll my eyes, because what does that actually mean? Now, if you've ever seen me give a talk on open data, you will have seen my slide that's basically an exit sign and says, get out of the building. If you want to know what people are doing and thinking and what they need from you, you need to get out more. And around open data and better data sharing, this is especially true, but it's not just about going out and talking to the community, whoever that happens to be, because your community is also your frontline staff, and it's your counsellors, and it's your finance team, and HR, and your ICT support people, and it's your policy team, and your strategy wonks, and in your democratic services team, and it's all the people who don't do the job that you do, but nevertheless they need to know something. They need some information, they need some data, or they need some support to make a case for something, or to support a particular committee or a particular project. And they are the community as well. So it's good practice to get out and to talk to people across your organisation and to partners and all the organisations that you're working with, to just say, what information, what insights do you need, what questions need answering, what problems are you trying to solve, and then to think about how you can contribute to put the data together for that. I'm not saying that we can do all of that as councils, but we can certainly help. And again, this is something, there's an open data working group in Devon, which is actually not run by the council. This is Devon Communities Together, which is a sort of umbrella body, support body for charities, decided to convene this group, and they chair it and they run it. And that's brilliant, because we've got academic representation, we've got council representation, SMEs and charities, and we talk about a problem that we can solve rather than a service that we can improve. And that's a really, really positive group, and we've done some good work hoping to make public a map that we've made of showing the areas where transport is an issue for people who are already vulnerable or disadvantaged. Devon being a massive place with a lot of roads and a lot of space in between towns and slightly patchy public transport options, should we say. Right, I see Emily subtly checking her watch. How are we doing for time?
No, time is fine.
Okay, just checking.
We have some questions, but maybe we'll go through the last
yes.
and then have a couple of questions.
Yes, we've got one last block to do here about measuring impact. So again, I already mentioned the thing about only measuring what you can manage, so you can manage what you measure. But what does success look like? What we got here, councils taking practical steps, it says here, to ensure that they're maximising impact. And there are lots of different types of impact, and one of those might be, a lot of councils who release a lot of open data keep track of how many data sets they've published, which is great because it's fantastic to have that as a tally and say, you know, we've done this work, we are very open and transparent, and this is all the data that we've made available, and that's fantastic. Other councils go further still. I think probably Data Mill North, which was originally set up and boosted by Leeds City Council, can track how many people are regularly downloading or accessing the data sets. And that's great because you can see a whole culture of developers and community groups consuming that data and turning into actual tools and apps to help people get done whatever it is they need to get done. So that's wonderful. But if you haven't already got that technical setup, you haven't got a data portal, or you haven't got analytics set up and you can't be tracking that, then what are the other impacts that you might see? One of the things that I like most about the work we've done in Devon is that the impact that we see is that people talk to us more, which is fantastic. That we have really, really good relationships with groups like Devon Communities Together and with the organisations that they represent, with the university, with SMEs, with individual developers, with an active and interested open data and transparency sort of community, who are, you know, our fiercest critics, but also in a lot of ways our best friends. And they will come and tell us what it is they think we should put out next. They will give us feedback on the data that we put out, and we feel like there's always an opportunity to have a conversation. So maybe I can't necessarily turn that into a metric and put it in a chart, but that relationship building has been incredibly positive. So to any council who's sort of swamped with FOIs and with people criticising and sort of sitting in the back of council meetings and heckling and submitting questions over and over and over again, what you've got there is somebody who doesn't, you know, necessarily trust you and wants to catch you out. It's an opportunity to open a conversation. I know it's easier said than done, but it can be done. It definitely can be done, and it's a good feeling to know that you have, well, critical friends as opposed to just critics. So that can be rather, rather good. Right, stop there and have a look at the questions, I think. Let's see what's coming in.
Thanks for that, Lucy. So we have two that are fairly similar from YouTube. Peter and Tim both asking a similar question. So Peter, how do you establish a data culture? And then Tim says, Devon seems to value data and takes pride in all the work and online offers you do with your team. And they also let you be a roving ambassador. How did you win their support and confidence?
Okay. Right, I hope my manager's not watching. I kind of didn't stop to ask for permission very much before I became a roving ambassador. It just felt like the right thing to do, and it has been incredibly positive. So Devon is very, very happy, I think, based on feedback I've had so far, for me to get out and about and raise the profile of the work that we're doing, because they see the benefits too. A very forward-looking attitude, which I think some people have perceptions of conservative, rural, shire counties as being backward, and we're really, really not. And the support that I've had from my hierarchy, from the cabinet member who's been in charge of my work area, has basically been, well, we're not totally sure we 100% understand every word you say and every sentence, but we certainly see the effects of people being positive about Devon, about seeing us as being approachable, and certainly having been made one of the exemplar councils by Francis Maud was a big deal. And I think that people possibly hadn't realised just how much of a national focus there was on this until that happened. So yeah, I'm not big on asking for permission, not big on asking for forgiveness either. I hope that what I'm doing shows its own results, and say with the relationships that we've made locally and nationally have been such an obvious benefit that it seems to be okay so far.
Would you say that's the main benefit, the relationships that you've made, or are there other benefits?
Well, coming from the relationships also come opportunities. So learning opportunities for me, and networking opportunities for me, for the council to talk to other councils about the way that they do stuff, or talk to other organisations, and look at working together. So it's never a bad thing to build those relationships, even if nothing else ever happened as a result. But things that do happen are that we get ideas, we get tips, we get support, we get resource. I've got a wide network of friends and colleagues who, if I'm stuck on something, if I don't know, and that happens a lot because I'm not an expert in everything, I know someone who does. I guarantee that there'll be somebody in my network who can help me. So that's another benefit. So in terms of having technical support, somewhere in my network, doesn't matter what you throw at me, somewhere in my network, somebody will know that, and Devon will benefit because we won't have had to spend money on a consultant or send someone on a training course. I can simply tap someone up and say, how do I get started with this thing? Or, have you got an example I can work with? So there's definitely that.
And what about internally in the council? How do you go about establishing that data culture?
Okay, so by doing it myself, and there is something about when people say, well, your culture is, it's about the way things are done here. That's not the way things are done around here. Well, I'm here and I'm doing it this way. So therefore it's beginning to be the way things are done. And again, relationships is about going out and making sure that I talk to people. So I hope I have, if I've missed anybody, don't worry, I'll be around soon. I hope I've made contact with everybody in my organisation who does data in some capacity, so whether they're analysts or database admin or ICT people sort of looking after the systems and the infrastructure, and to understand what it's like from their point of view, to what the issues that they face, how am I contributing to those issues, how can I stop doing that, how can I make that relationship better by being more supportive. And then making sure that my manager and their manager and right up to director level are aware of what I consider to be important and what I'm focusing on at the moment, and then up to councillors presenting to them and saying, we've got this way of giving you this report, say, for this particular committee. Let's say once one of the scrutiny committees I went to once and said, this is what we currently give you. I don't think we're serving you particularly well with this. What would be more useful? If I bring you something a little bit different, would you give me some feedback? So that's some work that we did specifically with the Corporate Services Scrutiny Committee as was. I don't know if they're still in that structure. Just to say, if I bring you, this is the same data you've always had, but I've made it more visual and we've done a different presentation, is that helpful or is that not? And to take all that feedback, good and bad, all feedback is a gift. The negative stuff especially, because you need to know whether or not you're communicating effectively. However great your data is, if you can't communicate it, then you might as well not be bothering because people aren't getting that. So building the culture is about saying, here is something I've done with data that helps you get something done. Not just here's some data, but here is an insight, here's an answer to a question, here's a possible solution to the problem using this data, and here's what I think is going on. It helps to build faith and trust in that the data exists, that the data is good, and that we can make it give us the answers that we need. So that's, I think, a really long-winded answer. Talk to people and show them how the data can be useful. Show, don't tell. Always have something that you can present and say, well, this is a way that I would do this particular job with the data, and if that's helpful to you, we'll do that some more, and make it a dialogue. Talk to me if you need more. Okay?
And what kind of challenges do you come up against in creating that data culture?
Okay, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it's the system won't let me. Not the people system, but the IT system, the infrastructure. It's getting better, it's getting less. Legacy systems, obviously, the bane of our lives. We're stuck with these things until the contract is up, and there's like one person who knows how to run the report and no one else is allowed to touch it in case they wreck it. And you can have the report, but you can't have an extra column because that's another 3 days coding for somebody, that sort of thing. And we're beginning to change that. We've got some new tools, we've got new ways of connecting up the data visualization tools that we use that make some of these things easier. So as that challenge lessens, what I'm finding now is that we're coming up against, people now are quite rightly concerned about, if we can just extract out of the back of that system anything we want, then what about data security? What about privacy? So we're beginning to have to, whilst we're all getting very excited about the new possibilities of extracting data from these older systems and having really good data to work with, making sure we don't get things badly wrong by sharing something inappropriately or sharing at too granular a level or storing it somewhere that's not secure. But yeah, it's been traditional in the past to we need somebody to blame and say, oh no, the biggest blocker is definitely people. If you're talking to people, if you are sharing, if you are being open with people and building trust, then people are not the block. They're very legitimate concerns are possibly a block, but only if you ignore them and pretend they're not your problem. You do need to work with people. Coming up against the tech, well, tech can't be charmed or persuaded. You have to find a way to, a technical way to make stuff work. Once you do that, then as I say, you're on to the, right, how do we work with this data appropriately? That's, I think, is going to be my next challenge, is making sure everybody is aware and is reassured around data privacy and working with it appropriately.
So the questions are coming in thick and fast now, so hopefully quite a short one now from Tom Mansfield. What do you think is the priority, learning by doing or establishing a foundation for insight through a solid governance foundation?
That's a trick question, surely. They're both important, obviously. If you are the sort of, now, there are different learning styles, all right? It's definitely a trick question. I learn by doing, because that's me. It's not everybody, though. So you need to learn by doing, if that's your style, and if you do that, you need a safe space to do that in. Devon is really good in having sandbox areas for messing about. If you want to do something that's going to end up on the web, you get a little WordPress instance. You can literally do anything you want. You install plugins. Literally just before the weekend, I actually trashed mine by installing a plugin that turned out to be a really, really wrong thing to do, and had to roll that back and fix it, which was embarrassing, but you know, it's a learning experience. And that was fine because I didn't inconvenience anybody else, because that's just my sandbox. So yes to learning by doing, and also yes to governance, and yes to safe play areas for people who want to test things out. And you should always, I left off when I said all the groups you should talk to, list of people you should talk to, I left off information governance. Guys, I'm so sorry. They should be on there. You should be talking to information governance because they know this stuff. You know, there's a whole professional route for people to know what is appropriate, what is legal, what is statutory. And there should be something that says, by all means play, by all means learn by doing, but you do that within this space here. And the minute you move over here, then there's going to have to be some system that makes sure that everything is done correctly and we don't jeopardize anybody's safety or privacy.
So if we go on to data sharing is one of the main challenges, well, from what I've heard anyway, obviously not working in local government myself. So there was a question that came in before, the webinar even started from Ben Foster saying, so he works in a district council with a two-tier structure, often comes across issues regarding data sharing that would otherwise have been avoided. Are you aware of any best practices there?
Good question. Now, thanks for that one, Ben. I saw that one come in first thing, and I put a shout out to the local Gov Digital group. So I'm just going to really quickly pull that out and see if anybody's replied. But in the meantime, once I check that out, it seems that, and this is similar to analysts having to manually redo a lot of stuff that probably somebody else has already done somewhere. It seems that we agonize over data sharing. When you get right down to it, there's really only so many ways that a data sharing agreement can go. You can have this data, just take it. You can have this data, but only certain people can look at it. You can have this data, but only you can have it, and you can't put it anywhere that's got, you know, access to the internet or that anyone else can see it. And these are the things you may do with it, and these are the things you may not do with it. And when I tell you we're done because it's my data and you have to delete it. And there's kind of maybe a couple of other points. So if we keep redoing, saying, well, we have to create a special data sharing agreement and everybody has to approve it, and, you know, it needs signing off at multiple levels, that's a great deal of work. When I had to do a data sharing agreement for something, not work I'm doing with the council, but as part of another organisation, and I just went onto the Information Commissioner's Office site, and they have a set of guides And one of those guides is a data sharing agreement should have these sections for this reason. You know, it should have who's the approved person, who's the authorized person. It should have what's being done with this data. It should have what are the safeguards around where the data's stored and what's done with it. And then I Googled a bit more and I found an example that I think it's a Scottish Government data sharing agreement template document. And I just borrowed that because it was based on the ICO template as far as I could see. So what I think is the best practice in my mind would be for every organization to have a template document that is that simple. And I think it's down to like 2 sides of A4, maybe 3. And that includes who's allowed to look at the data, named individuals, what's being done if there's personal information in it, and what happens if somebody messes up, what happens if an FOI request comes in or a subject access request comes in and who deals with that. And really, if there's any scenario that's not covered by that template, I'd be very surprised. So have a template document and make that part of the information governance responsibility, or you know, the central data team or whatever. This is the template. If you're sharing data, if you're working with us and you want a data sharing agreement, this is the one we use. If there's anything in there that you disagree with, well, we won't be sharing data. If there's anything that's not in here you think should be in here, we can talk, but this is the template that we use, and that could cut a lot of the redrafting. I think just cut it straight out.
And Tom's added another comment there saying, recommend doing a privacy impact assessment to keep your ideas information governance.
Yes.
Happy?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm going through that at the moment in Devon. I've just done a quick questionnaire, and then my information governance team just got back to me this morning saying we want to sit down and there's a slightly longer survey just to say, if you want this personal data, what do you want it for, and you know, how long for and why, and what are you planning to do with it, and where are you going to keep it? And again, those guys are the experts. So if anything about that gets their spider senses tingling, they need to check out what your plans are and make sure that you're not going to overstep the mark. But yeah, this is definitely a question for the information governance team. If you have those experts in the organisation, then talk to them and have a template. Just say it doesn't need to be painful. It should just be this document that says, as long as it's got these sections and these questions are answered, then we all have confidence. And I think that's why it's troublesome, is that people don't have confidence. And so they need a document that clearly has, you know, the get out clause in case, you know, am I going to get into trouble if these things happen? If you have that template that says all of the possible scenarios are covered, then people will have confidence, they'll be reassured, and you can get on with the actual project itself. Hope that helps. That was a bit rambling.
So we've got a question from Oliver Wiggins, which is kind of connected to data sharing and also the systems and legacy systems that you spoke about before. So what advice would you give in terms of contractual considerations when re-tendering systems to maximize extraction and flexibility?
Okay.
No biggie there.
Yeah, no, that's nice short. This will be a nice short answer. I don't really do short answers, do I? Right, let me think on that one for a second. So we've had had discussions, and again, there's a list of people you need to talk to. Procurement aren't on here either. Sorry, guys. Procurement should be on your list because they are the people who are expected to come up with a magical tendering process that will end up giving you exactly what you want, even if you had no idea what that looked like, which must be tough. You need to work out what it is that is your absolute minimum, without which you will not even do business with an organisation. You certainly already have that around sort of the standard due diligence. You know, these people, do they have equality and diversity policies? Do they have, you know, they're not some fly-by-night, they've been established for a little while, financially secure, and then something around the quality of the service. Are people happy with them? Do they have a support package? All the things that are pretty much in the standard document. And I've been trying to create another set of criteria around anything where you handle data that basically says, if you're tendering to work with us and your system is going to hold our data, I want to be able to get it back out. I don't want to have to pay you extra every time I want to report. I don't want to have to use a proprietary reporting tool necessarily. I don't want to have to beg you for the schema for the back end. I want to know what's there and how the tables connect to each other, so that I can think about, you know, creating my own extract. Ideally, nice to have, I'd like an API, but I will settle for just being able to get my data back out. If, let me see what else was in there. It's been a little while since I looked at it. I need to follow it back up. But basically, it's that. It's not even going to be that long-winded. It's just another set of criteria that goes into the tender documents. It just says, will your system do these things for me? Will it give me an extract in a choice of, you know, CSV, XML, JSON, whatever else you might want to use? Will it talk to this other system that I use for data presentation visualization? Will it allow me to automate a scrape to a data warehouse? Will it give me an API? And you can begin to have those be essential or desirable criteria for when you're scoring bits.
And in good news, an additional comment to that, the LGA is shortly going to be publishing guidance for IT procurement, offering good advices and clauses such as yours, and to help Oliver with his problem now.
Brilliant. See, great minds thinking alike clearly. So I can stop what I'm doing. I'll just use the LGA guide.
So going back to, I think this was data collection, talking about other items, other factors that will affect education or entertainment. Attainment, can't read. For example, bullying. How did you collect and make this data usable for informing your intelligence?
Oh, okay. I would need to back that one back to our education people. I think at the moment, Purposeful Systems team are looking at social care and an internal system, might be HR, I'm not certain. I don't know if they're onto education yet. I know that director for education is going to be looking at this quite soon. So let me check the wording of that. So education data is already very usable. So we have one system, EMS1, and there's a dedicated team of education analysts who work with that data, and they can do really quite amazing things with it already. So having done a lot of work in the past to make sure that that system had everything it needed to have, that it's complete, it's clean, it's structured, it's validated, it's checked, helped along by the fact that obviously there are so many reports that need to go up to the Department for Education and to Ofsted and so on and so forth. That external pressure has driven that team and has made sure that the resources were there to support that team to make sure the data is as good as it can be. So that's really not a hard thing to do from the point of view of simply educational admissions, attendance and attainment in the traditional sense. I would have thought that a certain amount of the information around sort of bullying, life circumstances, issues, educational issues and behavioural issues is going to be part of what's collected from things like Troubled Families Programme. But these things are all connected. And I think that we've done some thinking about how things like domestic violence and abuse can affect your educational attainment and attendance, poverty, malnutrition, illness, childhood illness, parents' illness, young carers. We do look at how these things interconnect, and that can help to drive then the quality of those other data sets to say, well, if we want to mash that up with education data in any way, even if it's quite a high level on a map, well, we're going to need that grouped. We're going to need the geographic identifiers in these other files as well, so that we can do that and at least look at how that's all how that all looks when we put it together. I hope that answers the question. I rambled again.
I think it's fine. Okay. So we have a question from Nick that's come through from Knowledge Hub. Could you give examples of requests from open data developers? I can't remember the context of this, though, I'm afraid. This was a while ago.
Oh, yeah, when I was talking about the network. So we haven't had requests for specific data sets, but what we've had is, if you're going to do it, can you do it right, please? Or can you do it this way? So certainly we had our spend data, spend over £500 data goes out, and the format's fairly prescribed because that's in the transparency code. It says it must contain these columns as a minimum, and that's all fine. And that's actually our finance data is very, very good indeed. We've got a data warehouse for that, so it's quite easy to do extracts as needed. Although someone has to put in the hours to sort of make that happen. After that, it can be automated. And we now store that in GitHub, and we did a little bit of exploratory work where we stuck it in GitHub and we changed the naming convention for each file for each month in a way that we hoped would help anyone who was trying to consume that programmatically, so that the file quite clearly said what it was and what date it was in a specific date format, so that people would know that they could consume that and it would keep coming in that way. And the feedback that we got was that was fantastic if you were only going to consume it programmatically, but if you wanted to look at it, and especially if you wanted to view it on a mobile screen, was that the file name kind of went off the edge. Even if you turned it that way, it just kept on going. And that was a problem if people just wanted to look at just a quick view of what you had in that repository. And we also had some queries around, well, if you're going to do this, please can you include the company number for the entities? Can you get that out of your system so you can put that in? So it's not so much people say, I want this data. We actually don't get a lot of people saying, I want such and such a data set. Even the FOIs tend to be rather, I want an answer to this question, or I want a list of these things, or I want a table that shows these things, but that's not raw data, it's already a summary. And when we put out data, what we get is, can we have that better quality? Can you include this column? Can you clean up, can you make sure the data in such and such a format? Can you not have blank columns? That's the thing we do with our Excel spreadsheets, blank columns to make it look pretty. We're trying to stop doing that. And so it's about the quality of the data sets we put out.
Sorry, so what's GitHub?
Is that Tim?
Yes.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry, Tim. I went full nerd again. Okay, so GitHub is Git is a technology that allows you to collaborate and share files, usually code. So if people are developing software, they can say, this is the bit of work that I've done. I'm going to take what you've done, do some work on it, and if you like what I've done, you can pull it back into your file. So it's a bit like version control and tracking changes in a Word document, except that the thing that you're getting back is an actual bit of a file that you can plug into yours. GitHub is a company that provides this technology so that you can have, and it's a little bit like having a folder structure. Basically, you have an account, which is you or as an individual or an organization. And under that account, you can have what they call repositories. And a repository is just like a big file folder. And in that repository, you put files. And each repository will have a special file called a README, which is like the front page that says, this is what you need to know about what's in here. It's just a text document that says, in our case, if you look on Devon County Council's repository, here's our spend over £500 data. This is what the columns are. We do this every month. If you have any questions, this is the guy you need to email. And then you just keep putting files in there. And if somebody wants to change one of those files, well, they can, but they can't change your version. They can take a copy and do anything they want to that copy within reason and legal restrictions, but they can't change your version unless you like their changes and you can pull that back in. And there is strict version control and an audit trail that says what's been done and what's been changed. This is why we like GitHub, because it's not costing us any money. It's free if what you're putting in there is open content. And as long as you don't go way over the size limits, GitHub are happy to host that sort of thing. One of the reasons that we found it so useful is and I think I mentioned this at the last webinars that we did last month, that we had one instance where we shared some data around assets, council assets. We were looking at possibly divesting some of these buildings that we weren't really using, patches of land that we didn't need, thinking that community groups might want to take them on. We could come to some arrangement where we let them have that asset or let them use that asset rather than have it standing empty. So we had a file of geographic data. Where are these assets? What are they? What do we know about square footage, average utility bills, that sort of thing. And we did that, and we had a web page set up, sort of community declaration of interest in assets, submit your form here, and a map. So if you said, right, I live in Ivy Bridge, what's happening in Ivy Bridge? Zoom in, let's have a look, and there are markers on the map. And as I always do with anything involving open data, put out some feelers to people I know and just said, you take a look at this and tell us if we got anything wrong. Tell us what you like, if you want to, but actually tell us what you hate. Tell us what we've done wrong, where we've messed up. And one of the things that came back was, yeah, your stuff isn't showing up where it should be on the map. Somebody who lives up country, has a relative in Devon, had a look at the town where his relative lives and says, yeah, you're about half a mile away from where you should be with that, so I don't know what's going on there. Somebody else who looked at it, a developer, said, yeah, I can see what's happened is you've got the wrong map projection. So you've done the conversion wrong. Because, you know, we use easting and northing, like we're the only people who do that. Everybody hates us. You need to know that everybody hates us for that. We need to stop. But we've done this conversion, wrong map projection, so everything was showing up just a little bit away from where it should be. The developer wrote a script that corrected our file, sent me a pull request. Literally all I had to do was to accept his pull request and boom, my data was then correct. That's why GitHub has value. If you think you may need other people to help with your data, or you want that strict version control, but you haven't got data portals set up, and actually you've only got a few data sets you're putting out, something like GitHub can be incredibly helpful. I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to get technical. It just slipped out. Okay, I'll try not to do that.
So I think this is going to be our last question because it's nearly 10 o'clock.
Good Lord, okay.
So this is from Alison in Broxbourne. Doesn't know how big Devon Council is. It sounds like you have a number of teams and analysts crunching numbers.
Yes.
What are some of the best ways for small councils to get started harnessing their data to achieve some of the things that you've sort of demonstrated here?
Okay. Right. Well, the first thing to say is that even if you don't have a lot of people with analyst or data modeler or data scientist or whatever in their job title, you will have people who can do this stuff. You'll have somebody who's an absolute wizard with spreadsheets. You may have some people who can do a bit of code. And you're going to go back to relationship building. Go talk to people. Go talk to people who currently handle data. And you may find that they have more skills and more ideas than they currently get to use in their defined role. And that is really, really common in local government, is that we have our job description, we have our role, and we have the things we have to do every week, month or quarter or whatever, the reports we need to churn out. But we have potential to do more and different things. So talk to the people who are working with data already, find out what they're up against, find out what more they would do if they had the chance. And then I would recommend finding a sample or a pilot project, a little something that you can work on with these people and then show to people a little bit further up the ladder and just say, we did this with minimal resource, you know, almost nothing. But this is a taste of what we could do. And hopefully we'll free up some time, some resource to build on that and do more. But you've got to have that thing that you can show and say it is possible to do stuff like this if we're given the chance. So, and the people definitely in your organisation, however small it is, there'll be somebody who really knows how to get stuff done. And hopefully you'll find someone who's plugged into the same networks that we are. So if they don't know, they know someone who does. So definitely join up with things like Local Gov Digital, with the Open Data Camp team. I think we're going to send links around afterwards, aren't we, like we did last time. So we'll send information out to everybody about all of these. Plug into those networks, go to things like Local Gov Camp, Open Data Camp, and make connections so that you also have access to those helpful people on the internet who are always happy to offer, you know, support and advice. But yeah, it's all about making friends. It always comes down to people.
Okay, thanks. So we didn't quite get all the way through the module, but that's fine. So there's a number of case studies that you can go and look through in your own time. You can access all 6 modules at lga.learndata.info. I should have written it up here. Do that for the next one. There was one question we didn't cover, which we covered last time, about a list of tools for visualization, but we'll send out the same links that we discussed last time, or you can watch one of the webinars, the 10 a.m. making your data work for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you want to pick my brains individually, drop an email to transparency@local.gov.uk and they will pass it on to me. And you're very welcome to drop me a line at Devon County Council and ask questions. Happy to talk, as you can obviously see.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget feedback, transparency@local.gov.uk. Tell us what you thought.
Thanks. See you next time. Bye.